Um, I am looking forward to the new year and looking forward to hearing Sam speak today. So we have Sam that will speak, and then after Sam speaks, we will definitely spend some time in prayer in groups, hopefully, and also take announcements after Sam speaks. So, Sam, thank you so much. We look
Okay,
forward to hearing
sure,
from you today.
sure. Thanks, Troy. Hey, everyone. Happy New Year. Most of you guys know me. Haven't been in the office much lately because of things going on, but I'm gonna talk about that today. So most of you know, well, if you follow my Slack updates at all, you might know this has been a hard season for me and my family, and you may have heard some or all the story. And of course, it's been a hard season for C Company as well. So anyway. I wanted to share about what I've been going through and what God's been teaching me through that, and hopefully that can encourage someone else too along this journey. So I'm gonna just I don't know who's heard of what, so I'm just gonna I have a presentation I'm gonna share and just go through the story from my perspective, and then um we'll take it from there. Okay, so hold on. Let me share my screen. Um, can everyone see a slide that says morning prayer 1625?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so this whole story, the unexpected season my family has been through. This past summer, my wife and I discovered she was pregnant again. We have our 4-year-old Benny, and you might have heard before. We've wanted a second one for a while. So the news was happy, but it also carried some apprehension because we've had four miscarriages between 2021 and 2023. So we were never sure, like, would we have another one? Would one of these come to term? But this pregnancy, as we went on, we could tell there was a heartbeat and everything was healthy. So we were glad and joyful for that. Still a little apprehensive, but thankful and anticipating. So little man was due on February 1st. So we began praying and preparing for all of that. Um, in September, I learned that a friend from college lost his wife in childbirth. She had high blood pressure and preeclampsia, which can be very serious, and so that kind of hits home when I mean it's hard anyway when you hear about a friend dying, and especially I'm relatively young. This girl who died was like in her early 30s, like me. Um, so yeah, but especially when my wife is also pregnant and we've had complications, this hits home. It's like what if like could that happen to me? Like I didn't want to assume the worst case scenario, didn't want to borrow trouble, but we were like, what if? And this, we were just reminded that life is not life is fragile and not guaranteed. So that added maybe a little bit to the apprehension too. Um, then in October, we had some different difficulties. Our 4-year-old Benny caught cold-like symptoms from his preschool, and at least we assume it's from school. It's fall, it's cold season, but he had trouble breathing and respiratory distress, so we had to go to the ER for that. We took him to urgent care one day, and I kind of assumed, oh yeah, urgent care, and then they'll pack him up and send him home. But they were like, nope, his oxygen's low. He's got to go to the ER. So that was a surprise and just a also a harrowing thing in this season. Thankfully, he was released the next day and made a quick recovery, or so it seemed at the time, because the next month, actually exactly a month later, his symptoms got bad again. They did say he had RSV, which can linger for a while. That's one of those nasty ones that hits kids harder than adults, but that's been going around. And in the middle of November, then we tested his oxygen at home because Rachel now knew that was a sign to look for. He had low oxygen, so we took him to the ER again a month after his first visit, and this time he stayed for 2 nights before being released. And we were like, okay, I mean, this happened a couple times. Whatever he's got is lingering, and it might be indicative of asthma or something for when he's older. But we were like, okay, fingers crossed, Lord willing, it's one of these 2 times. That was a fluke, and hopefully it'll be okay from there. So that was middle of November. Um, okay, so I'm going to shift gears. In November, I was also reading this book called "What About Evil" by Scott Christensen, and I'll just say up front, like I didn't pick it up specifically because I was going through anything at the time. It was one that was on my shelf for a while, and I just happened to read it at this time. Well, just happened. I believe it was God, but it was kind of next to my list. So it wrestles with the classic problem of evil, kind of asking the questions like, if God is good, then why is there evil? And philosophers and people smarter than me, Job being one of them, have wrestled with that for many, many years. Um, his argument included these major points, and I mean, it's a thick book, but I'm summarizing. Um, he says that God causes evil. I mean, we sometimes say God allows or permits evil, but this author argues that God actually intends evil, but he does so for good and glorious purposes. I realize that can be a controversial point. He gets into like Calvinism and how much is foreknowledge and such. I won't argue that today. I'm just throwing the idea out there that God, in some sense, causes evil for good purposes, but the author compares it to like a story written by an author that God is writing history. He's writing the narrative of fall and redemption and everything. Um, and he used as an example like the Lord of the Rings. It's a famous story. Like the Lord of the Rings contains some evil characters and some evil situations, but he argues, we don't call J.R.R. Tolkien evil for including those things in his story. We know he's doing that for a redemptive purpose. And similarly, the argument goes, God is doing this for a redemptive purpose. And he also says, this is part of it too. He says the final state of glory and redemption are even better and more glorious than they would have been without the evil to overcome. Like any story, it needs a conflict. I mean, if there was no villain, if there was no darkness to overcome, the Lord of the Rings wouldn't be much of a story. And there are certain things like the character's heroism or bravery or determination, whatever, certain things we wouldn't see, certain goods that wouldn't need to arise if it weren't for the presence of evil. So he also argues in the narrative of humanity that that heaven and redemption will be even better than unfallen Eden, even better because of the evil than they would have been without it. So I know it's a lot to swallow. I've even changed my views on some of these things in the past few years by reading this guy's books, but that's the argument that somehow God sovereignly works intends evil, but for good purposes because he knows the good that will come of it. So I have those ideas floating around in my mind while I'm going through these things. Sunday, December 1st, first Sunday of Advent. So there's that. We're heading into the Christmas season. So God had been showing me a verse. You know how sometimes you see the same verse two or three times in a row, and people say when that happens, you better pay attention because God's trying to tell you something. And I mean, I mean, to some extent, maybe you know, there could be coincidence, but for me, like two times is a coincidence, but three times is three is more than a coincidence. So this verse I encountered in the book I was reading, What About Evil? He used this verse, and then I saw two separate people post it online in a span of a couple of days. One of them was my dad, and I was like, oh, I need to pay attention. The verse was this one, Second Corinthians 4:17. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. So that was the verse, and so honestly, I mean, now I can obviously see why it was significant, but at this point, like I didn't feel like I was in affliction. Like my son had been in the hospital a couple times, but we were like a few weeks out from the last time. It was a normal Sunday. We were driving home from church, and I remember asking my wife. I was like, so God showed me this verse, and I'm not quite sure why. I mean, I can think of maybe a one or two small situations in my life, but like I don't know if I call those affliction. And I'm like, and I asked her like, do you have any idea what God is showing this right now? Can you like give me some insight into this? Um, and so I knew I had to pay attention. I didn't quite know why yet. Um, the next day, it became more apparent. Monday, the 2nd of December. Rachel, my wife, went in for a baby checkup. We did know that high blood pressure was a concern. They'd mentioned that before, and they were like, we'll keep an eye on it. We're not concerned yet. But we'll keep an eye on it. And again, because I had that friend who had died of pregnancy complications, I was maybe extra, maybe not worried or anxious, but just extra cautious. And I was praying I prayed that morning, like, God, please, please let them get ahead of this. If this is an issue to be concerned about, please let them, be aware of it and treat it however is needed. So she had a routine baby appointment, but it wasn't a routine checkup because they were concerned and they wanted to admit her for the hospital for monitoring. So that image is just me trying to be funny with my situations and making memes to help me kind of process things. But it's like I prayed for them to get ahead of it, and then my wife went to the hospital, and I was surprised, like what, um, God answered my prayer, maybe not in the way I expected or wanted at first, but He did answer. Um, I wanted them to get ahead of this, and my wife went into the hospital. But at that time, we were very tired of hospitals. My son's already been in there twice. Um, so we thought, a day or two, and they'll send her home, and then everything was back to normal. Not quite. Um, Soon she was officially diagnosed with preeclampsia, which again is also what my friend died of. We learned that in order to treat it, they deliver the baby early. They said no later than week 34, which would have been the 21st, and keep Rachel in the hospital on bed rest until then. So suddenly it's like, oh, my wife's gonna be in the hospital for what, 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm doing this parenting thing alone for a little bit. We did come to visit her at the hospital every day. So that was good. And then my mother-in-law came out to help during our seasons of need. So obviously, we had help. It was great, but still a trial, still not what we expected our December to look like, or our holidays or our pregnancy to look like. Also on Friday 12/6, some of you may recall, the seed company RAF was announced, the reduction in force that hit many of us hard, and and affected many of our colleagues. I mean, obviously, I wasn't directly affected. I'm still here, but I know it's been a difficult season for many of us, and I mean, um, like, and I will say, in a year when I have a new baby and we have more hospital bills than usual, it was hard to hear that we won't be getting raises this year. I mean, I understand. I'm not angry, not complaining, but we were all affected in some sense by that, and yeah, this hurts. It's a hard season, and I think everyone understands that. So that was 12/6. I know this affected us. I mean, this affected a lot of us deeply, but for me, it was like, oh, I'm already going through this one crisis. Now my work is going through a crisis too. It's just a lot. So Tuesday, let's see, the 10th, Benny's breathing symptoms were getting bad again. We prayed he wouldn't have to go to the ER again, because we were tired of hospitals, obviously, and Rachel's already in the hospital. And I didn't say this out loud, um, but I think I had this underlying sense of like God wouldn't do that to us, like God knows my wife's already in hospital. This is too much. He knows I can't take my son to the hospital too. Like God wouldn't do that to us, right? I kind of had that feeling in my mind. Well, guess what? After a while, my mother-in-law did encourage me to take Benny because he in the hospital because he wasn't he had similar symptoms. His oxygen was low, and I did. It was his third ER visit with him in as many months. I stayed with him there for a couple nights when my wife was in a different hospital. Benny's at the children's hospital. Rachel's at the labor and delivery place, and two of my family members are in the hospital, and we're separate. And so obviously, I mean, I know now. Um, I I shouldn't say God wouldn't do that. We, we can be tempted to ask some things like why me, God, in that picture. I don't remember where I saw this because I've seen different encouragements and such in this season that have stuck with me. But someone said something about like instead of why me, God, you should ask why not me. I mean, but again, I had a friend who lost his wife to pregnancy, and I'm very thankful that I didn't. But like, and that friend is a believer and everything, and didn't do anything to deserve that. And I'm like, if God will allow that for my friend, and that's part of his story, then why wouldn't God do the same to me? Or why wouldn't God put my son in the hospital a third time? Not saying it, not trying to act like God is vindictive. I'm just like, if if even these things can, even these evil things or these hard things can be part of our story, and God still uses that for good, then why not me? Um, So I mean, now I have a perspective, and a few weeks later. At the time, it was very hard. During that time, my phone broke too. I mean, it seems small compared to everything else, but I was letting Benny play games on my phone while he was in the hospital, and I don't know what he did to it, but the screen stopped working. Um, and with me in one hospital, my wife in another hospital, my mother-in-law at home trying to take care of things, it is hard to communicate with all of us. And I'll admit, these few days were my personal low point in this whole ordeal when not only is my wife in a hospital, but I'm away from her with my son, and things are it feels like everything's falling apart. I mean, I was having thoughts like I give up and I hate life and things like that. Um, and and yeah, it was a hard time. Um, but it was only a few days. Benny did come home, and after 3 visits in the hospital, they've given him some treatments that seem to be helping and seem to be preventing future episodes so far. Sunday the 15th was the rejoicing Sunday of Advent, the third Sunday of Advent. Um, we watched church online from my wife's hospital room, but she wasn't feeling well that day, and doctors were concerned about her symptoms, about her not feeling well, and decided to deliver the baby by C-section that night. So we were trying to get to 34 weeks. We didn't even make it that far. Sunday, 12:15, they were like, "Yep, let's deliver. It's time." And shortly after 9 p.m., I met this precious little guy. I got to see him there, as they were rolling him out of the delivery room. So you'll see more pictures in the next few slides. Don't worry. This is Matthias Mark Harris. Was born premature on December 15th at only 33 weeks. Again, his due date was February 1st, so he, under normal circumstances, he'd still be in the womb right now. We were expecting a New Year's baby. We're not expecting a Christmas baby, but that's okay. God knew what was going to happen. He was only about 4.5 pounds, a little less than 4.5, and was 17 inches long. They immediately transferred him to NICU, where he still is now. So it's been 3 weeks. He's been there for 3 weeks now. Um, Matthias means God is gracious. We thought it was a fitting name, um, with everything going on. And I mean, even before this, even before we knew about the complications, like we decided on the name after our miscarriages and the losses we've had. We were like, God is gracious. He's giving us one more baby, and we want to celebrate that. So that's him. Since then, Rachel came home. After 16 days of being in the hospital. We've visited our son on the NICU every day, including Christmas and New Year's. It's funny. That's him, and that's a stuffy he got, and a little elf, and he's the same size as a stuffed elf there. That's Christmas Day. We celebrated Christmas with Rachel's mom still here, and a few days later she flew home, and my family came in too. Matthias is progressing well. We expect him to come home soon, Lord willing, in a week or two. Hard to know for sure, but that he's doing well. I mean, the nurses and doctors keep saying he's not sick. He's just little. Again, normally he'd be in the womb at this point, so he just needs help learning how to feed and regulate his own body temperature and stuff like that. But he's doing well. He's hanging in there. We're hanging in there. Um, I mean, yeah, so you might ask, like, yeah, I might ask myself, why did God put my family through this? What good came of it? And of course, we don't always know God's purposes. I'd say we often don't know. We hope, we can speculate. It's hard to know for sure. So this is an incomplete list, but I have a few items. Um, One, we were able to have family be here at Christmas. My mother-in-law was here with us on Christmas Day. My family came in a few days after that. We had thought we wouldn't see family for Christmas because we couldn't travel, and we were like, they won't come till after the baby's born. But surprise, baby was born early, right around Christmas break, so people could come visit us, and that I think was still a blessing. I was thankful to have family at Christmas. We've experienced great generosity and care from family and friends, church and colleagues. Yes, my church family and even some of you probably on this call have reached out to ask how can we help. People have brought us meals and done housework and babysitting, but also just like money and gift cards for eating out and such. We've gotten a total amount of over $3,000 people have given us. We didn't do a GoFundMe. We didn't really ask for money. I mean, people at our church reached out and asked, how can we help you? Can we send gift cards or whatever? And again, people here are giving too. So we didn't, it's not like we were begging for money. Money is helpful, but people have been very gracious and generous in reaching out and caring for us. So we wouldn't have seen, again, going back to that theme, without these difficult circumstances or these evils, as we might call them, we wouldn't have witnessed this kind of generosity from the body of Christ. We also received full financial assistance from Cook Children's, covering all of Benny's 3 visits. Still not sure about the bills for Rachel and the baby, but Benny's 3 visits at Cook Children's are all covered by financial assistance, which is amazing, because we would have had a hard time paying that on top of everything else. So we see that as God's provision. Benny's time in the hospital helped him kind of to understand better what his mom and his brother were going through. Like, he saw a picture of his brother all hooked up to the wires and stuff, and went with a breathing mask on his face. And Benny was like, "Oh, I had those too." Like he didn't freak out. He was just like, "Oh yeah." He was like, "I know what that is because I've been in the hospital," and that and he wasn't and he was like, "That's a point of connection." So it was just cool that we noticed that connection. Like God used that to even create compassion and understanding in my 4-year-old son. Also, if you ask me what came of all this, I'm just going to show you one of these pictures of my son, because like that's the answer. That's the precious gift that has come through all this. Um, is my little guy, and even in the circumstances, circumstances are not what we hoped or what we wanted, and again, we're still not out of the woods. We're, Lord willing, over the worst of it, on the tail end of this trial, but we're not out of the woods yet. But still, he's healthy, and his life, he's here, and we're thankful. So I know I've gone long. I'll wrap it up, but questions for reflection. What is God putting you through right now? I don't know if anyone's still having a hard time with the RIF. I don't know if you're going through something in your own personal life. I mean, and I mean, I'm sure there's trials here that are not trivial, and are real and significant. But ask yourself, what is God putting you through right now? Um, and of course, we won't always know the reasons, but you might ask yourself, why might He be doing that? What good has come or is coming or will come of it? And I believe, if we believe in the sovereignty of God, there is and will be good coming from these things. So that's what God's been teaching me, that good comes out of hardship, and I hope that encourages some of you too. So I know I've gone over, so thank you for listening, and I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah,
Yeah, we really appreciate you sharing. Always appreciate your honesty too.
sure. I'm glad to do it, and I hope it helps someone.
Yeah. That's the way God works, so I'm sure it did. Is there anybody that would like to share anything after Sam today? Well, feel free to share in the comments as well, or in the chat. Well, this has been really encouraging today, so thank you, Sam.